This lens release is an interesting one, and I'm excited about it, but it is strange. According to the info that I received, this is part of the Sigma Quartet contemporary line, which means that is now a quintet. But in my opinion, it might be the start of a brand new or at least updated line for Sony APS-C and other APS-C lines as well. This is the new Sigma 12mm F1.4 DC contemporary, and today we are going to be checking it out. The idea behind this lens is excellent. Ultra wideness, maximum f1.4 aperture, compact and light package. One of the reasons I don't think it fits into the existing contemporary APS-C lineup is the design. This doesn't look like the other lenses. It has an aperture ring, which I wish the other contemporary lenses had, and the general shape of the lens is different. Construction is solid. It's a mix of high quality plastics and glass, and weight is a very light 225 grams. Starting at the rear, metal mount, electronics, a weather sealing gasket, and the entire lens is dust and splash resistant. 025 indicates a 2025 release, contemporary C logo, some lens specs, the Sigma logo, minimum focus of 0.56 feet, and made in Japan. The aperture ring has some of the best click noises I've ever heard. Check it out. Yeah, I've messed with this a lot over the few weeks that I've had this lens. There is no D-click option, but it feels perfectly smooth from f1.4 to f16 and then a longer click into A for auto. In front is a nice manual focus ring that is rubberized, grippy, very smooth with a nice bit of resistance. Around the front is a modest convex front lens element and some very faint text. Made in Japan on the bottom, specs on the top, and a 62mm filter thread. Inside there are 14 elements in 12 groups, a 9 rounded blade diaphragm, and a stepper motor that is absolutely silent. It feels more like a linear motor than a stepper. Mounted on my a6100, it is a compact, light setup that gives you a little better control with that aperture control ring compared to something like the Sony 11mm. All of these samples are straight out of the camera, JPEGs from my a6100 unedited. This 12mm on an APS-C camera gives you the same field of view as an 18mm lens on a full frame camera. You can capture vast landscapes, dramatic views, and the minimum focus means you can even get some nice bokeh when you are very close to your subject. Now, I wanted to do a comparison between this new lens and the Sony 11mm f1.8, which is the competitor to beat. So let's check that out. I ended up doing this comparison twice with two Sigma lenses just to confirm my findings. I'm going to keep all of the Sigma images on the left and all of the Sony images on the right. This is the first one. You could probably tell immediately contrast levels are a little bit better with the Sigma off the bat, but let's take a look at center sharpness, and this is f1.8 on both, so the Sigma is slightly stopped down. The Sony might be just a touch sharper, I don't know, we'll see here in the corners. Very, very close, and you'll see that chromatic aberration, both lenses have it. I'd argue that the Sony's perhaps is a little worse, but the Sigma still has plenty of it here as well. And you could see that with the tree branches as well. So you see that purple fringing here, same thing on the Sony image. Both of these, again, at f1.8. So pretty fair comparison. You see the fringing here, fringing here. When you shoot both lenses wide open, this is what you get. Center of the frame. I think Sony looks sharper to me at f1.8. And then let's take a look at a corner. That's definitely sharper at f1.8. So this corner, same thing. Bottom corner, same thing. It's not that the Sigma is horrible in the corners, but it's just ever so slightly, just a touch softer than the Sony wide open. So here is the Sigma at f1.8 versus the Sony at f1.8. And here it looks nearly identical. Look at the corners. I'd still say the Sony looks a little bit better. This corner, it's easier to tell with the bolts. It's very close, but I think that the Sony is sharper in the corners at f1.8 versus the Sigma 12 at f1.8. In terms of flaring, this is what you get both at f1.8. Both lenses do pretty well with flare control. I was going to do this because I also wanted to see some chromatic aberration if we got any. There is some loca here, so out of focus areas you can see fringe nice and purple here on the Sigma lens. The Sony has some fringing of its own with this branch back here. Here's another example. Wanted to see if we get some chromatic aberration here. And you can see there's a little bit more green. There's some purple, a little bit more green fringing with the Sigma. And with the Sony, you get a lot more purple. Here's perhaps a better example, both lenses at f2, and so you'll see a little bit of flare control between the two. They look virtually identical. You see some flaring elements, but the interesting part is when you move around and you'll see chromatic aberration, a lot of chromatic aberration with the Sony, purple lines, and in terms of sharpness, I mean, it's pretty close, maybe slight edge to the Sony. I think across the frame, again, the Sony is the sharper lens out of the two. And that's a little bit surprising because I was expecting the Sigma to be at least equally good in the corners, and it's just ever so slightly softer. Not by much, not a whole lot of difference, but it is softer. And again, that chromatic aberration. Minimum focus between these two lenses is pretty close. This is shot at f2. See, the 11mm gets pretty close. The 12mm gets a touch closer, but not a whole lot more. And then the vignetting. So here's 1.4, here's 1.8, then f2.8, then f4. So again, 1.4, 1.8, 2.8, and 4. And you'll see that specifically the corners do get brighter as you stop this lens down. So that's something to be aware of. The Sony has some vignetting, but the bigger issue that it has is contrast levels at f1.8, because as soon as you stop down to f2.8, I mean, look at how much better the colors look on the Sony. So f1.8, f2.8, and here is f4. But if we're comparing f4 on both lenses, I mean, they get really close. You guys tell me which one of these two you think is sharper in the corners. Stop down to f4. With Sigma lens releases, you almost expect it to be sharper or better than what's out there, but with this release, apart from the slight better performance in regard to chromatic aberration and smoother bokeh, the Sony really won the battle of sharpness, at least in the corners for sure. If you are shooting photos to blow up on billboards, or if you need landscapes to be sharp across the frame, the Sony is the better lens. Now, there will always be that extra 2/3 stop of brightness that the Sigma lets in, and that is certainly a big deal, but I think that there are compromises that come as a result of making an ultra-wide-angle lens this compact. Sony somehow manages to pull that off, but the f1.4, I don't think Sony will ever give us an f1.4 ultra-wide like this. Ultimately, the Sigma produces images that are vibrant, encapsulating nearly a GoPro wide-angle field of view, and with the lens being dust and splash resistant, it makes for an adventure lens that you can pack in and take with you, perhaps a good candidate for astrophotography as well. It's a fun lens to use, and it offers a surprising level of versatility because of that close focus ability. Who knew that you could take up close shots of your food just like this with an ultra wide angle lens? Flare control on the Sigma is excellent, better than what you get with the Sony. Focus breathing is a non-issue. There is almost no focus breathing whatsoever with this lens, and this is not with any focus breathing compensation turned on. This is just what the lens is doing. And the autofocus motor performance is excellent. It's quick, it's silent, it's accurate, and it tracks as well as any other native Sony lens. Now, an important segment that I haven't discussed yet is this lens's appeal to those who might vlog. This might be the ultimate vlog lens. First, you get f1.4, which means blurrier backgrounds, subject separation, and excellent performance in low light or nighttime situations. Second, it's very sharp in the center of the frame where your face is going to be. Less sharp in the corners, but for vlogging, I guess it's not much of an issue. Third, you might think that 12mm is a bit too wide, but it is not, especially with newer camera bodies that have active stabilization with the additional crop. This makes a perfect option for arm's length recording of yourself. And fourth, it's small and light, making it travel friendly. And then you look at the price. Now, this is an expensive lens compared to the other contemporary lenses out there, except for the 23mm, which still is even more so. But this Sigma 12 is launching at $629 US. The Sony 11mm, on the other hand, is $698 as of today. So there's about $70 worth of savings in between these two lenses. It is available for Sony E, Canon RF, and Fuji X mount. So while it might be a toss-up for those of you who shoot Sony E between this and the 11, if you shoot some of the other mounts, there's really not much out there that can compare to what this new 12mm can give you. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. Is this new lens part of the Sigma Quartet, making it a quintet now? Is there a new line of Sigma primes coming out in your opinion? Would you pick this up over the Sony 11mm? Links to both of these lenses will be down in the description and in the comments, so check those out for current pricing if you guys are cross-shopping these two lenses. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.